Hello everybody and welcome back to the development journey of Satisfactory in Minecraft. In the last episode, we kind of got a base idea down, really just kind of started thinking about how we're going to make this happen. And today we're going to really refine that, figure out, kind of the core mechanics, and actually start to dig into our world map and start to actually build it out and see how it plays and how it feels. Now, the very first thing I want to address is how to actually make this feel like Satisfactory, because let's be honest, this is just create with an OR node. This doesn't really actually feel satisfactory. I think there's stuff we can do to make it work, but I think we want to lean more into making it feel like Satisfactory, take some of those game design elements from Satisfactory and actually bring them into Minecraft using create as the core. I've also definitely heard all the comments saying that command blocks are not the way to go in the pack, so we will definitely be changing our command block system over to either a data pack or a mod, depending on what I can kind of figure out going forward. Now, one thing I do want to mention is there are definitely other mods that could work in a Satisfactory styled pack. The first of which is immersive engineering. I mean, it seems like it might work. You have conveyor belts to move stuff around, and you have these big multi-block machines that basically do a function. But I don't actually think this is going to work for our pack. The main reason is we have the multi-blocks that the mod provides, but we really just have these structures. We can't really make our own. We don't have as much freedom as we do with create. So I think create will definitely provide us more of that freedom and work better in our pack. So while immersive engineering could work, I definitely don't think it's the mod that is going to work for the core for kind of my idea of Satisfactory in Minecraft. Plus, trains are a must, so we'd have to have create anyway. Now, another really interesting mod is Tech, and this is basically a tech mod that actually looks exactly like Satisfactory. You have these orange and kind of metally blocks. You have stuff like drone ports, and it definitely, on the surface, looks like it could work in our pack, although I don't think it's going to. First off, power is handled by pipes, and so is item transportation, and we definitely need some sort of belt to actually get what we want. Now, we could belt items in and out of Tech stuff, but I just don't think that the mod itself is set up for us. Everything is kind of like these individual block structures that you kind of build out, but I still think we really want that freedom of create and actually be able to customize our world a little bit more than Tech's going to allow us to do. Now, that's not to say we might not include it in the mod pack. Main reason is it has drone ports. Drones are in Satisfactory. It might be something we want to add. It also has reactors and other things that Satisfactory does have. So we'll definitely keep an eye on Tech, and if there's stuff that we can't emulate with Satisfactory, we might look at Tech or, maybe even immersive engineering and see if we can pull some of those features into our mod pack. Now, here's the thing. Originally, my plan was, you'd use the very generic create stuff to actually automate your Satisfactory items, and that would kind of be it. And I'd use create progression as kind of the basics of the mod. But I think I'm going to actually change up the way I'm going to do this. And the reason is this is create. We're essentially just going to be kind of using Satisfactory as a way to improve create or kind of change the gameplay. But really what I want is Satisfactory in Minecraft. I want the satisfaction of building a huge plant, processing lots of ores, and be able to do stuff really quickly. So I think we're going to kind of change pace and kind of lean more into Satisfactory. And the way I think I'm going to do this is instead of having a system like this, where, the player would have to set up a series of fans to smelt ores, and you'd have tons of ores going down a single line, and that's kind of it. I think instead, multi-block structures is going to be the way to go. And I think we're going to accomplish that through schematics. So for example, I could have a smelter schematic here and grab this, and we could definitely have a way that the player can either gather these or have them in their inventory and have them be reusable. And this would be what it'd place down. Please don't judge the build. This is really just a proof of concept. It will definitely, I promise, look better in the final version of the pack. But the idea here is you could plop down your schematic, you could build it, and we'd give away for the items to be taken from the player's inventory instead of an outside chest. You could build another one, and you can have a series of smelters, which you can then feed items into to get your items out. And I think we definitely want to use other mods. So for example, I'm using Create New Age here for the power. So instead of using Satisfactory shafts and gearboxes and stuff, we can actually transfer power via poles. So eventually we'll have a bunch of different schematics. You have your smelters, constructors, manufacturers. And if I were to grab some ore here, drop it in one end of our smelter, it'll kind of go in and then smelt up. And it'll pop out the other end in just a little bit, and we'll have our smelted item. And I really think this is the way to go. It feels very Minecrafty once we actually get these looking good. It'll also look really nice when you have lots of these in your world. And I think overall, using create as kind of the bones is going to be a nice way to kind of set ourselves up. Now, in order to test this out, I'm going to build a very early version of the miner and the constructor, and we'll kind of set up our first little assembly line. It'll probably just smelt something and then press something into plates, but it'll give us an idea of kind of how it'll play and how it'll look in game, and we can kind of move on from there. All right, so very early proof of concepts already. These will change, but we got our smelter you guys have seen. We've got a constructor, which at its core is just a press. So essentially right now, all it'll make is plates, but we can modify recipes to make whatever we really want. And then finally, we have our miner. And the miner is going to fit kind of the ore node I have planned. So we've got our 3 main buildings we can use to build our first actual assembly. Now, in order to actually build these and make them work with a mod pack, what my plan is like when you build them, it'll place all the components, but when you break the components, you won't get like orange concrete. So in order to build it, you don't have to like collect concrete and girders and these blocks and the copycat panels and the ladders, because that's a lot of work to craft all these different items. All the different items will still be in the game because I want you to be able to decorate to your heart's content. But in order to build this, I think what I'll do is I'll make like this just take concrete to place, and these just take steel or like iron sheets. And maybe the drill, that's where you have like more advanced parts, like you need the screws or something. And I think then when you break it, you get like concrete from this, and you get the plates from this, you get the screws from this. And so that way, like you can quickly dismantle something without filling up your inventory, and it'll only be like a few items to actually build it, which is the way Satisfactory handles it. And I think that'll work pretty nicely. So I think now it's time to start looking at designing our world map, so we can take these structures, pop them into a world, see how it feels to like place the schematics, see how it all looks all set up in our Satisfactory in Minecraft world. Now, as we kind of move away from the player having to like place every single block to build their assemblies, what I think is going to be really important to do to make this still feel like Minecraft is still integrate Minecraft into the pack. I really want the player to be able to go through all the different Minecraft progression stuff and kind of merge it with Satisfactory instead of just like slapping Satisfactory into Minecraft haphazardly. So part of that is I want to be able to actually like have every Minecraft item be able to be gotten in Satisfactory. So if you want to build medieval style, you can do that. If you want to enchant gear, you have that option. So I think the next thing I want to do is start looking at how to actually integrate all those different items with our pack. Now I've broken it down into 3 different types of items that we're going to want to be able to get in our mod pack. We've got blocks, like all of our nature blocks that are just going to be found around the world. We then have all of the Minecraft equipment, gears, and tools. And then finally we have like decorative blocks and things that we can use to decorate and make our world look better, as well as like special stuff like monster spawners I think I want to include. Now for all of the gear, I think I want to be able to get that through a research tree and basically emulate the MAM. And so you have all this different equipment that you can unlock that uses stuff from exploring the world and stuff that you manufacture in order to unlock this gear, which you can then use to upgrade your players. So that way you're not only going to be building out your world as you build and get more technology, you're also going to be able to be upgrading your player at the same time, just like in Satisfactory. And this is going to definitely include things like jetpacks. So that way, you know, like the player can actually like have flight and like other stuff that's in Satisfactory but not in base Minecraft or the create mod. And I think the way I want to handle like decorative and special blocks is it's all going to be handled through a awesome sync system. So one thing that we're going to have to tackle is like Satisfactory, everything is infinite. And I think in Minecraft, we can emulate that by, you know, still producing stuff and then having some sort of resource sync. That way, like it has a place where all the items kind of flow into and get turned into points of some sort. We might just use tickets like Satisfactory does. And then you can spend those tickets on different decoration stuff for your base and different items to kind of upgrade the way you can decorate, make it go faster and stuff like that. We might even take our kind of like schematic idea and have you be able to quickly place down floors and walls so you can like build a really big factory up without actually having to place everything block by block. So I've gone ahead and looked at every single block and item in the game, and I have a list of what I think is needed to craft every single other item. So starting off here with our ores, I mean, we're going to have ore nodes, and I figure we can do impure and pure nodes, with the impure being like the regular stone and the pure being the deep slate. I think that'll be a fun distinction and a fun way to do that. We have all of our ores plus all of nether ores as well as amethyst. And we got all of our woods. We'll spawn those in tree forms with their corresponding leaves. And now we have the stones. So we have all the different stones we need to make sure to include in our world, as well as all these different nature blocks, snow, ice, clay, all the dirt and sand blocks, And these I think will be pretty easy to include just in our world. I don't think any of these should be automatable. I mean, you can make like stone farms. Maybe we make a way to like automate all the different stones. Like in Satisfactory, how you have limestone nodes. Maybe we do make like a different node for each one of these. So you can like get infinite of all of the rocks if you want to build something big with them. So we'll definitely consider that, but we'll still make sure to spawn them in the world so you can collect them. And then we have mushroom blocks, coral blocks, beehives, the sulk stuff, and then suspicious sand. And the reason I wanted to lay all this out is when we start working on the world, I want to make sure to include everything so you can get everything. And speaking of, I have these two chests on the end. One, we have all of the stuff I want to include underwater and all the stuff we want to include on land. So by including all of this stuff in our world, and then having you be able to craft stuff from these items, and then having unlocks for gear and shops for decorative stuff, I think we should actually be able to include just about, if not every single thing from Minecraft in our mod pack. So in order to actually make our world, we're going to use a number of tools, but we're going to start with World Painter. Now, World Painter is essentially this tool that allows you to build up terrain to essentially build a version of your world that you can then export and build into Minecraft. And you can see here, we've got all this terrain here. And if I were to go ahead and pull up a 3D view, you can see the terrain in 3D. And this is what will then show up in Minecraft. Now, this is the world that I've gone ahead and created for a different project. Just kind of give an example of what our end game is going to look like and how we're going to be able to build up our terrain really quickly and then bring it into Minecraft. Now, the first thing we needed to do was figure out how big the world is going to be. And I ended up deciding on a size of about 4,000 by 4,000 blocks for the landmass. Ended up being a little bit bigger, but I think this is a pretty good size. The way I did this was I took an initial sketch of what I wanted the world to look like. I then sunk down all of the ocean areas, exported it to Minecraft, and just explored it to see how big it felt. My first try was a little too big, but the second try seemed to be pretty spot on. Okay, so here we are in the first pass of the first biome of our Satisfactory and Minecraft mod pack. Now, we have the world laid out here, and I actually have it planned out so that there's space for every single biome that's in Satisfactory. So that way we can have our grassy fields here, we can have our dune desert, we can have the bamboo forest, and basically just have room for all the different biomes, which I think will be really fun to kind of emulate and pull some features from Satisfactory into Minecraft. Now, one thing you'll notice is this is a pretty different layout than like vanilla Satisfactory, and that's mainly just because I wanted to make my own world and create my own thing. But we are definitely going to take a ton of inspiration from the way the biomes are and try to take at least one feature from each biome. Like in the grassy fields here, I'm definitely going to put in that big like arch shape that we have in Satisfactory into the game. Now, as far as next steps, the very first thing I need to do is make this feel more like Satisfactory. This doesn't read as grassy fields to me, and I'm not quite sure why yet. So I'm going to boot up the game. We're going to take a look at the comparison between this and Satisfactory and see kind of what we can do to emulate Satisfactory more in our Minecraft world. So here we are in Satisfactory, and there's a few things after running around for a bit that I noticed that I think we can emulate that'll really make it feel like we're playing Satisfactory in Minecraft. Number one is Satisfactory. It kind of works on a plateau and cliff system. It's like we have this big open flat area where you can build a big factory, and then with the different height elevations, it's not really like a rolling field. It's kind of like a ramp and then a cliff on the side. So like over here, we have the series of cliffs, and then this ramp that kind of leads up from one section to the next. And I think if we emulate that, that's going to be the biggest change we can make to make it feel more like Satisfactory. The second thing is we don't really have tall grasses all over the place. We have this really short grass, which will probably just be your block. And then we have these like clumps of vegetation. So if we have sort of some trees and some little bushes that we can kind of place around, I think that'll get us closer to what we're trying to see here. And then the last thing is these patches of dirt and gravel. Now, eventually, these are going to kind of outline where our roads go, which Satisfactory does a really good job of. If you kind of follow these dirt patches, it's like a natural road through the world, and that's something we're going to want to do eventually. For now, I think we're going to really focus on just kind of plopping some down to get the feel of it, and then we'll kind of build our roads out as we kind of continue and start to actually flesh out the world. So if we head into photo mode here, you can kind of see a larger picture of what I'm talking about. So we have like these cliffs that kind of lead up to each different level, and then we have just these big open areas with just like a few smatterings of rocks and trees over the areas. And then over here, this is that big arch I was talking about. So this is what I want to create as kind of our centerpiece for the grassy fields biome. Each biome, I'm going to like pick some sort of feature or stylistic choice to kind of like make it feel like the biome. And I think for us, it's going to be this big funky arch. Now I say that, but I'm also looking at the stinky rock here. You know, stinky rock is tempting, but I think I'm going to go with the arch for our grassy fields. So here's our world, and this red outline is kind of what I decided for our grassy fields area. And honestly, I think despite the fact that it kind of sucks to start from zero, I'm just going to flatten the whole thing and start over. Now, what I have gone ahead and done is kind of laid out like a rough height map for the whole world. So if I zoom out here, you'll notice like there's a big plateau here, and then we kind of come back down, and there's like some plateaus here and a ravine over here. So I am gonna kind of use that to transition, and we'll have to work on the transition from biome to biome later. But for now, we can really just focus on getting our feel down. Then things should go quicker from there once we kind of know more what we're doing. Okay, so we've got everything flattened to a height of 76. So that should be a little over a 10 block jump from like our water level to our flat area. And I'm just gonna kind of pick some spaces and we'll just kind of pull up the terrain, flatten it out, and kind of make our big areas. Okay, so here's the 3D view of kind of what we have. We do need to do a little more work, but we have kind of like the middle section go up, and then we have these big plateaus here and here. They have like this big section that kind of snakes through the whole biome. Short area here, some cliffs along the ocean. And then one thing that we can't do in World Painter is underground areas, so we can't put the hole in our arch, but we have a placeholder here. So I think now it's time to check this out in-game, see how it feels, and then play around with it. But first, I do want to add our texture in. And to do that, I can actually paint the different textures on the blocks. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint everything with grass. And I'm going to specifically take a bare grass with no flowers, and we'll just paint that over everything. We'll leave our kind of red biomarker there. And then I'm going to go in with this rock brush, and actually Satisfactory, all the rocks are the same color. So I'm just going to pick stone for now, which is going to be pretty basic, but we'll fancy it up later. And for this, I'm going to do only on terrain that's above a certain degrees. So I'm going to do probably 30 degrees. So it's only going to paint it on our cliff. So it's kind of hard to see zoomed out, but if I zoom in here, you'll see that we're painting all of our cliffs with that stone texture. And if I were to go back into our 3D view, you can see we now have our first cliffs painted in. Okay, so here we are. And first thing I noticed is these are, actually maybe they are tall enough. My first thought is they weren't. I think that's probably correct. They could probably go up a little bit, but overall, this is pretty close to what we're looking for, right? So you kind of run around, you have these terrain variations, we still need to get in our bushes, and then, you know, a little bit of variation in the terrain down here. But I think this does get us closer to what we're looking for, right? We have this like big open space. Oh, I could totally fit a factory here. And you have these like variations in elevation. I think it looks pretty good over here. And then you can see there's going to be our big arch. And size-wise, I think this is pretty spot on, right? So this is kind of not quite the middle. If I up and over to spectators so I can go a little faster. This is about the middle of the biome, right? It kind of expands all the way out every edge. So I think we're getting pretty close to what we're looking for. And then along the ocean here, you know, obviously we have these like bigger cliffs, which I think that looks pretty good. I think one thing I want to do is maybe raise up a few of these sections, but otherwise I think we're close enough that I want to start adding in my ramps and then clusters of vegetation, because like this looks really good. I don't know why or how this happened, but like we have this little cluster of plants instead of them just being everywhere. And that's kind of exactly what we're looking for. So let's do another pass. We'll add in some ramps, raise some stuff up, and then come back in and check it out. So this ended up being quite a bit more work because I actually had to go in and redo all the different cliffs to get them fixed, but we now have our raised cliffs, we have our ramps leading from section to section, and this feels a lot closer to what we're looking for. You know, we've got these big open grassy areas, and then we can like run up here, get to the next big open grassy area, and I actually went ahead and added one of those texture packs where like you don't see the side of the grass block, and I think that actually works really nicely for what we're doing here. And yeah, I think we're really quite close to actually having this feel exactly like Satisfactory. We do need to get in like the actual trees and the rocks all over the place, but it feels good. I think we finally got it down. Now, before we're done with World Painter, I do want to fix up like these weird little edges that we have going on in a few places, as well as kind of texture the ground and the sides of the cliffs. But that's going to be pretty much it, because I actually want to come back through afterwards using World Edit and Axiom to actually add the details, because I think adding all of that in-game is going to be a lot nicer of a process than trying to do it all in World Edit. So we're pretty close to having our kind of first pass done on the grassy fields. But that's going to have to wait for a later episode. For now, I actually want to get our first few schematics in here, get an ore node down, and actually see how everything looks in game and play through a little bit of it to just make sure that the feel is kind of correct in what we're looking for. All right, so we've got our first two kind of like very early alpha schematics. There's definitely going to be tweaks and improvements to both of these as we go, but I've got our first ore node. So this will be like our in-peer iron node. So you can see we have like kind of those cracks and stuff you'd see in Satisfactory and like the big rock in the middle. And I think this is going to be the one iron ore that's going to respawn. So like when you find one of these, you can like go and you can like mine out all of these iron ores down below. And then this one you're going to set up with your automation so you can then pump the iron out to your machines. And I think that'll work really nicely, because then we can essentially just have like one drill and then one belt coming off into our machines. And then pretty basic, I just have a little tree I kind of shaped out here. This is kind of mimicking something you'd see in the grassy fields. It's not perfect. And I think one downside I'm going to have to deal with is traditionally you can use like fences and different blocks to integrate with your trees. But with Create, you can use a saw to chop down all connected wood blocks. And I kind of want to have all of our trees be able to do that. So we're really stuck to just kind of using logs and leaves for our trees for now. We might change that in the future, but at least at the start, I'm going to give it a really good try to kind of build these trees to be able to be used with a saw to cut them down. So I'm going to jump back over to our little test world and we're going to paste these in and then go in and test out automating one of these nodes. Now, when I actually get into doing this for real, I'm definitely going to be using Axiom or World Edit for my schematics, but for now, we can just go ahead and use Create because we've got it. And, you know, we can kind of paste these in. Maybe we'll pull it back a little bit. We'll do one there, and then we'll do maybe another one, and we'll rotate it so that way it looks different, you know, when you're just glancing at it. We can do that. So we have our two first nodes kind of placed in the world, and hopefully those will be kind of obvious where they are. I think they should be. I think we'll be pretty good. And then we'll just kind of come up here and we'll just place a few of these trees. And then actually one other thing I want to do is put a small waterfall in here, because at the start of the game, you're only going to have water wheels. So we need to really be thinking about kind of our river systems and stuff. And we're going to want to plan in little waterfalls around our ore nodes. That way we're actually like able to utilize them and automate stuff right off the bat without having to wait for wind power or move power over a long distance. So let me get this little area set up and then we will jump into survival and try automating one of these nodes. So absolute first things first, look at how good this looks. It's not a 10 out of 10, but like it's probably a solid 7 just with a little bit of effort. This did not take me long to do, and I would definitely do a better version on our final version, but it didn't take long, and so I'm really not too worried about detailing the rest of our world. I just kind of added in some trees, a little stream, some texture to like the walls and the ground, and then dropped in our ore nodes, and I really like how this looks. Okay, so here we are in our world, and over here, I've got a very early game version of the hub. Obviously it'll look way better than this. This is just a box to kind of give you the idea, but we've got our hub, and the main reason is we have our like biomass generators in the back. I think having an early game way to get our power pole going is going to be really important. Now, kind of starting off in the game, you will have to like do normal Minecraft progression because this is Satisfactory in Minecraft. So you'd have to like go to trees, mine wood, get your first like stone pickaxe. You'd have to mine iron out from this first ore node, and then you'd have to smelt it down by hand. So you have to like place it in a furnace, wait for it, and then continue on. And I kind of have a furnace and a crafting bench here, so that way, like similar to Satisfactory, you can do all of your crafting in here manually by hand. So once you have that first few items, you would then place your first schematics. So the way this would work is like you'd have your schematic, you would line it up with your ore node, and then you'd like line your drill up with the middle of it, which is going to be a little bit clunkier than just playing Satisfactory, right? Like you can't just plop it down. But I think it should still work pretty nicely, and it's a lot quicker than trying to build this all yourself. Now, when we get to the final version, the player would like have to have like plates and screws and all the different components in their inventory in order to place this down. For now, I'm just using creative because I'm going to either need to find a mod that does that or develop something, but we can place this down. And we now have our working drill. All I would need to do is grab some power. So I can grab this wire, run up here, connect it to there. And I kind of like New Age. For one reason that's kind of silly. It lets you clip wires through blocks. I know we don't necessarily like want to do that long term because it doesn't look good, but Satisfactory lets you do it, and that's what we're doing. We're doing Satisfactory in Minecraft. But anyway, I can connect this over here and then connect it over to here. And we're now producing iron. So this will mine out, it'll respawn in, and then we'll mine out another one. Now, one really cool thing about doing it this way is we have a lot of control. What I mean by that is by not having the player actually interact with the crate components, I can adjust the speed really easily. So I can adjust the speed so that way like you get 10, 20 items per minute and adjust that however I see fit. And that way the player can't just speed everything up to max and then run it like that. They're just going to have to build more power and more units instead of actually being able to speed it up. Now, that doesn't mean we'll need to do something with belts because, like, by default, you can just place belts and you don't have power. But I think there is a mod that lets you, like, link belt to belt, and so we might just use that long term. But for now, I'll just grab myself some chain drives and hook that up. So we've got our first component here. We can then, come down here, and we'll build our second component, which is going to be our smelter. So we're going to place our smelter in our world. Looks like we got to flip this, rotate that, move it into position. And getting stuff lined up is going to be a little bit of a headache, but like it shouldn't be too bad, especially once I kind of get the hang of it here. But I can hook up our smelter, hook up our belt going all the way through, and you can see we have our first raw iron coming through. And then I can hook up power. And it looks like power poles, we might need to V schematics too, just to make that easier. But we have our smelter now hooked up, so items should be able to flow through into here. Oh, if this is fixed. Okay, early alpha version. We have a lot of stuff to fix, but we're at least figuring it out, or at least being able to test it. So that's nice. Okay, so now it should work. So now our iron should be going in. Oh, if everything wasn't backwards, everything's backwards. Okay. Looks like flipping it did mess everything up. All right, so I got it fixed. So now iron is going into our smelter. And again, I can really control the speed about how fast things get smelted down. But things get smelted down, come out this end. And then we can even grab our constructor here. We can plop this down. Oop, you see we got our first iron out. So we put down our constructor. We can hook this up to a belt, and then we gotta hook up the power system, which we might want these to be a little more accessible than having to run up to the top. Although actually, you know what, that was not too bad. I can hook this up. We need to come a little closer, and like that. And now our constructor should be working. And there we go. We now have our iron going into our constructor. It's being pressed down, and we're gonna come out with plates. And there we go, we got our first plate. So we actually have our first production line in Minecraft, which is really cool. And I really like this new game design direction. I think it's going to be a lot more work, but also this looks like Satisfactory. This is what we want. Before it just kind of was a create mod mess and kind of pretending to be Satisfactory. Now we actually have all of our buildings, we can place them down, and I can actually really see making like big areas, big factories using these components. And they also look pretty good, even though this is a very early version, and it reads as Satisfactory. Like, if you've played Satisfactory and I told you, hey, this is Satisfactory in Minecraft, you'd be like, okay, I can see it. We're obviously going to make a lot of improvements, but I'm really happy with this first little test. Plus, having create really just be like the core of our machines allows us to do stuff like consider the simple belts mod instead. So this is a mod that basically lets you place down belts, and they look exactly like Satisfactory belts. Not 100% exactly, but they look pretty good. And they actually would carry items from one machine to another. So after we mine out this ore, you can see that it will actually pump out onto our belt and be taken to our next machine. Now, there's just one tier of these. You can't speed them up, but it's definitely something I'm going to consider in the pack. So that's going to be it for this video. I'm really happy with our new game design direction, and I think we've got it. We now know what we need to do to make this happen. And in the next video, I'm really going to start digging into it. We're going to start building out phase 1 of the pack and actually look at how it's going to play and what we need to do to actually bridge the gap from where we're at now to where we need to be. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.